It's Macy's Friends and Family. Get an extra 30% off great gifts for her just in time for Mother's Day when you use your coupon or Macy's card. And take 15% off beauty essentials. Or shop specials she'll love while supplies last. Plus, Star Rewards members earn on every purchase except gift card services and fees at Macy's. Sign up today at Macys.com/Star Rewards. Savings off regular sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile, the podcast. This is episode 218 called Kirsten McLellan. This podcast is sponsored by RECEPTIVA DX. RECEPTIVA DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive RECEPTIVA DX test is endometriosis with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, RECEPTIVA DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about RECEPTIVA DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile AF listeners are getting $75 off the RECEPTIVA DX test. So all you have to do is go to receptivadx.com or download the app RECEPTIVA DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, RECEPTIVA DX.
Hello, Infertile AF listeners. This is Blair Nelson, Allie's co-founder of Fertility Rally and the creator of Fab IVF Mama over on Instagram. I'm excited to chat with you really quickly today about our Fertility Rally event we have coming up April 29th called Fertility Rally Live. It is the 6th event that we are hosting. It is a virtual online event, free to anybody that could get any sort of benefit from it. For all of you listening, we would love for you to come, share it with your friends, your family, anyone you think you could benefit from it. You can get your ticket by going to fertilityrally.com or going to the Fertility Rally Instagram. The link is in our bio there. You do not have to show up on April 29th if that date doesn't work for you. The beautiful thing about the platform we use is that anybody that claims a free ticket prior to the event start will have access to all of our talks for 30 days, which is huge. So just a couple of highlights of the event. We have singer and songwriter Christina Perry as our keynote speaker. You might know her from the songs 1,000 Years and Jar of Hearts. She is incredible. She has an amazing story and gets into all the details as well as provide inspiration for anybody listening to the talk. We have an expert physician panel moderated by another infertility warrior. And we have several breakout sessions covering things like platelet-rich plasma treatment, like healing after loss, mental health, Eastern and Western medicine combined, and so much more. We also have an exciting afternoon reset to just get your mind right when you're going through hard times with a soul cycle instructor. And then, of course, in true rally style, we end it with a happy hour. So again, you can snag your ticket over on our Instagram at Fertility Rally or fertilityrally.com. Enjoy this episode.
Okay, guys, today I'm talking to Kirsten. She's the author of a book called This is Infertility that talks about her 6-year IVF and surrogacy journey. She's going to talk about being in Australia, in Canada, in the US, and then having her son Spencer. So without further ado, this is Kirsten's infertility story. All right. Hello, Kirsten. How are you? Thank you so much for doing this today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about your book, which you emailed me about, and everything that you've been through on your family building journey. But as always, let's start at the beginning, which is, did you always want to have kids?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So tell me about growing up. What did you imagine like that your family was going to look like one day?
Yes, different to how it turned out, obviously. But I always imagined that we would fall pregnant easily, that we would have 2 children, most likely a boy and a girl, and that by my mid-30s, I'd be married with 2 children. That's
okay.
how I pictured it.
Right. So tell me about meeting your husband, Ryan. When did you guys meet?
So we met actually the night of my 28th birthday. So he came to my birthday drinks with a mutual friend. So I hadn't met him before. And we started talking and we, hit it off right away. And at my birthday drinks, he told me that he had the same birthday.
Okay.
Which I did not believe at first. So he said, happy birthday. It's my birthday as well, by the way. So we have the same birthday, different years, but both have the same birthday, the 6th of October. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's how we met and started dating. And obviously everything went really well. And then, we moved in together within the year. And then another 6 months or so after that, we're engaged and then married. And then it was probably about a year after we were married that we decided to try for a family.
Okay. So were you guys in Australia at the time? I know that your story kind of spans Australia, the US, and Canada. So tell me about the chronology of that. Where were you guys when you first started, trying to have a baby?
Yes. So in Melbourne, Australia. And we were trying for about 9 months. And I think like many women, I just assumed that we would fall pregnant straight away. So at around the 9-month mark, I started to feel really confused and frustrated. I just didn't know what was happening. And so we went and saw a doctor just to run some of the standard tests. So to check my hormone levels and to check my egg quality and count, and everything came back normal. And so then we continued trying. And then at about the year mark, still not being pregnant and being really confused and frustrated at this point, we tried Clomid, so the medication to help you ovulate, just to make sure that I was ovulating regularly. So we did Clomid for 4 months and still no pregnancy. And then we moved on to IUI and we did that for 4 months. This is all in Melbourne in Australia. And so after 4 months of IUI not working, we saw a IVF doctor who recommended we try IVF. And that's when we started our IVF journey.
Okay. So tell me about, I know obviously you can't generalize Australia and the attitude towards assisted reproductive technology as a whole. Obviously every person is different, every clinic is different, but culturally, what is it? How is it in Australia? Is it kind of, do people talk about it? Is it widely accepted? Did you have a lot of people that, were talking about this? What was going on with you guys? And how is it, I guess, compared to the States and Canada where you have lived during all this?
So it is very common in Australia, and I have many friends and work colleagues and relatives who have done IVF. I think the difference I noticed when we did IVF in the US later on in our journey when we did surrogacy is I feel like the US is just a little bit ahead of Australia. So in terms of the technology and the customer service and, some of the treatments that you offer. And the other difference I would say is more to the surrogacy side, that surrogacy in Australia is not very common. So commercial surrogacy is banned. Altruistic surrogacy is legal, but not in all Australian states. And of the 92% of surrogacy pregnancies are actually done overseas. So only 8% are done in Australia. It's a very long and convoluted process actually in Australia. So a lot of couples or a lot of people decide to go overseas for surrogacy. In terms of the stigma around fertility or the myths, I think it's the same as the US. So in Australia, the number of times I heard, I think you just need to relax or stop thinking about it, or, you just need to go out for a night drinking or just have a holiday. I'm pretty sure that that's very common in America and other parts of the world as well. So those misconceptions, unfortunately are still around, unfortunately.
Okay. So how were you and Ryan doing after, the failed lies and the Clomid and all that stuff is not working, and now you're going to embark on your IVF journey? Were you guys pretty much on the same page about it? Were you thinking the same things? Was there any drama behind the scenes or, disagreements? I think you probably know this because I know you listen to the podcast, but I've been really open about how it was very hard on my marriage and my relationship. And, I think it's pretty common for that to happen. It almost seems like it either pulls people apart or really brings them together. And we unfortunately were in the camp where we were like, are we going to make it? So how was it for you guys?
Look, at the start, it was fine because I think we were really hopeful. So we were then convinced that IVF was the magic solution and that we would do a transfer and we'd be pregnant. So, we went into it sort of hopeful and excited and thought, well, we'll do, this cycle for, 4-6 weeks and then we'll be pregnant, we'll have our baby. So that was kind of the mindset that we went in with. And, I remember feeling very, devastated and confused when the first transfer didn't work because I just thought it was a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I, at the time, wasn't as knowledgeable about IVF and didn't realise that actually it can take couples several cycles before pregnant. And also, the issue that I have, which is a thin endometrium lining, I didn't know about that early on in our journey. And so we had quite a few failed and cancelled IVF cycles until we sort of worked out what was happening. And so I didn't see any reason why it shouldn't work within the first cycle or two. So,
Okay. So tell me about what was happening. Did you weren't getting pregnant, or did you get pregnant and experience loss for the first couple rounds?
Both. So the first cycle failed, and then the second cycle, I actually had what's known as a pregnancy of an unknown location. So the embryo had implanted somewhere in my body, but it wasn't in the uterus and it wasn't in the fallopian tube. So it wasn't an ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
It obviously was not viable pregnancy and it was dangerous if it continued. So I had to, in the end, have methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy agent, to end the pregnancy. Then on the next transfer, it was cancelled because my lining just wasn't thick enough. And this is when the issue first started to appear. So in Australia, the lining needs to be 6 millimeters or more to do a transfer. And I know that in the US and other parts of the world, it's 8 millimeters or more. But mine was, on transfers that went ahead, mine was always in the 5s. And on transfers that were cancelled, it was in the 4s. And so I remember we had done, all the medication, the treatments for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they, at the end of it, the doctor was like, well, this is just not increasing. Like, we have to cancel the cycle. Your lining's too thin. I was like, what's the lining? Like, no one had mentioned it or talked about it before.
So interesting and not uncommon. Yeah.
Not uncommon. And so I didn't realize that the endometrium lining was so important for falling pregnant and staying pregnant. And so that cycle was cancelled. I actually think we had maybe 2 cycles in a row that were cancelled. And then we did another cycle and it was, it failed and the lining was thin again. And I think it was late 5s. And, the doctor at the time, she was very casual about it. So she just sort of suggested that, pregnancies on thin linings happen and it wasn't such a big deal. But on the side, I went away and I researched it myself, as you do. And
as so many of us do.
So many of us do.
Yes.
And I learnt that actually the lining, is so important, and that, a healthy lining is closer to sort of 10 millimeters, not in the 5s, and that anything under 6 or anything really under 7 is considered thin, and that the success rate is low and the miscarriage rate is high. So with all that information, we actually changed specialists and we went to a doctor who focuses more on implantation issues. And at that first appointment, he suggested surrogacy at that very first appointment.
Wow.
He, did a bunch of tests. He did a biopsy of my lining and he tracked it for a few months with ultrasounds, and he agreed that it was just very low. And, I tried everything that was available to increase that and nothing was working. And so he suggested surrogacy, but at the time we just weren't mentally ready for surrogacy.
Right. So that's like a big pivot, obviously, major pivot. What did you, when he said that, what was your immediate first thought?
No. I just felt very overwhelmed. I'd never met anyone that had done surrogacy before. I'd never met a surrogate before. And it felt too overwhelming. And at the appointment, my husband, joking, sort of laughed and said, oh no, I don't think we're not there ready for that yet. I don't think we're there yet. kind of ridiculous suggestion. And so he accepted our decision, the fertility doctor, and said, okay, well, we'll try, to get the lining up. We'll do everything we can and we can go ahead with another transfer. And so we did. We went ahead with another transfer, and my lining did get the highest it had ever been. So it was in the 6s at this stage. It's still low. It's still too low for the US. But we went ahead, and I mean, the other point I'll make is that we were transferring in PGS embryos as well every time. So, pre-genetically screened embryos. So the embryos were coming back genetically normal.
Okay. So you weren't having a problem, Kirsten, making, healthy embryos. It was just the getting pregnant, staying pregnant, the lining. That was your main issue?
Exactly. And so on that particular cycle, we did fall pregnant on that transfer. And, we went in at 7 weeks, and, devastatingly, the baby's heartbeat was too slow and the baby was measuring too small. And, we were told that we would, that the pregnancy wasn't viable and that we were going to miscarry. And I had a follow-up scan a couple of days later, and by that point, the heartbeat had stopped.
I'm so sorry. That's just awful. It's the worst.
It's the worst. And, it's awful experience, which so many women couples go through. And so after the miscarriage, we thought maybe we should do surrogacy after all. Maybe we need to be listening to the doctor. And so, as you mentioned earlier, we actually started surrogacy in Canada. Okay.
So how did you get from Australia to Canada? Was that like a work thing, or was it because of your fertility journey? Or
so our doctor, fertility doctor, suggested Canada. He'd heard a few good surrogacy stories out of Canada, and so he recommended we go to Canada, and connected us with a clinic, and we were matched with a surrogate, Julie, this lovely woman who was doing surrogacy for the first time. And also surrogacy in Canada is altruistic. So whereas in the US it's, it's commercial, you pay. In Canada, it's you pay for the out-of-pocket expenses and obviously the treatments and things, but otherwise it's altruistic. And
right. So sorry, just backtracking a little bit. Yeah. How long did it take you to get matched with her?
Oh, not long. We were really lucky, actually.
Interesting.
It only took maybe a month or two.
Oh, wow. That's so quick.
It's very quick. We're very lucky because it's not commercial. It can take a while to match with someone. So we're very lucky. And we actually had a really bad experience with Canada. So we flew over for our first transfer, and we transported our embryos from Melbourne to Canada, which is standard practice. People transport eggs, embryos, sperm worldwide every week, whether they're doing surrogacy or they're changing clinics, whatever it is. And so we met Julie and her husband and her sister and her brother-in-law like the night before, and we all had dinner together. And then we met at the clinic the next morning, and we were sitting in the waiting room for ages, absolutely ages. And, the transfer time came and went. Like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? And, poor Julie was busting to the bathroom with the half full bladder that you usually have for a transfer. And then a nurse eventually came out and said, oh, the doctor wants to see, you and Ryan privately. And we went into his office, and he said, we went to open the container, an hour ago to thaw the embryos, and the container was empty.
Oh,
yeah.
What?
I know. Yes. No embryos inside.
What happened?
Good question. No one knows. We
don't
know. So the possibilities are that the container wasn't packed correctly in Melbourne at the IVF clinic in Melbourne.
Oh my God. I've never heard of this happening before.
And that was the thing. Like everyone, the clinics, lawyers that we spoke to after, everyone said, never heard of this happening. There was like one case that the lawyer came across in the UK a few years before, but such a rare thing to happen. But yeah, in the end, we don't know what happened. So it could have been packed incorrectly in Melbourne. Something happened in transit, like if it was X-ray, because it was under strict instructions, you're not meant to X-ray the container, or it was unpacked incorrectly at the clinic in Canada. Although, I mean, I don't think that was the case, because otherwise they would have just lied straight to our face if that was the case. So,
right.
But we don't know. And it was just,
oh my God,
because it was just such a shock. So I think, you know, when you miscarry, like, of course, it's devastating and, you know, it's a bit of a shock. But this was something we'd never considered. So it hadn't even made my list of things that could potentially go wrong. Like it just even into
So wait, can you tell me, what did they say exactly? I'm just curious about the conversation when they came in. Yes,
they said the container of embryos, the container is empty. We went to open the container to thaw the embryos and there's nothing inside. There's nothing.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was just, and it was like the shock was just, it was just awful. Like I just went into this state of shock where, you know, it was this beautiful sunny day and I was freezing all of a sudden. And like, I was having a panic attack because I hadn't expected it at all. And we'd flown, you know, from Melbourne, which is a long flight from Melbourne to Canada. And we'd been so hopeful because, you know, we thought, well, the lining is the issue. We've removed the infertility. And we've got these PGS embryos. We've got a surrogate who'd had 3 of our own children, had no issues whatsoever. Like, this will work for sure. We'll have a baby by Christmas. It will all be fine. So, and, you know, luckily we had, I think we had 1 back in Melbourne, but, you know, I was like, like, you just never know, like, how many eggs you're going to collect and how many you're going to make embryos. And I was like, what if this was it? And we never, you know, make any more embryos. And, it was just awful.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That was Canada experience, unfortunately.
Yes. So then what do? You just leave? You're like, okay, well.
Yeah. I mean, that was the other thing. It was so family and friends. And, you know, when things like that happen, you just want to be with loved ones. So, and we just, you know, got a flight back as quick as we could, which was really long. It went through Dallas for some reason. And it seemed to take forever to get back home. And yeah, so that was Canada. So then we moved on to the US.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you guys, there's got to be kind of a grieving process, right? After that happened with the embryos and, you know, not being able to proceed and all that stuff. I mean, how did you navigate that?
I was seeing a really good psychologist. I'm guessing they're called psychologists in the US, or counselor.
Therapist. I mean,
therapist.
Yeah.
Really good therapist. So I saw her every week, and, you know, she really helped and, you know, gave me a lot of the tools to work through it. And otherwise, you know, friends and family were amazing. You know, Ryan and I lent on each other and helped each other through it. He just kind of threw himself into work because he's one of those people that if something bad happens, he just needs to be really busy.
Right.
It's Macy's Friends and Family. Get an extra 30% off great gifts for her just in time for Mother's Day when you use your coupon or Macy's card. And take 15% off beauty essentials. Or shop specials she'll love while supplies last. Plus, Star Rewards members earn on every purchase except gift card services and fees at Macy's. Sign up today at Macys.com/Star Rewards. Savings off regular sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Hurry and shop the final days of SpringFest at Lowe's. Right now, get an additional $300 off when you spend $1,996 or more on select major kitchen appliances. And keep your lawn looking fresh with savings on the Ego 15-inch string trimmer. It was $219, now it's $199. Shop SpringFest today, because Lowe's knows spring. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid to 4/26. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for details.
Distracted, whereas I took a week off from work and binged like reality TV and The Housewives and all the escapism shows you could think of. So
yes, I'm like you, and my husband is like Ryan. Yes,
yeah. So whatever helps you cope. So, but yeah, it was awful, and I became really superstitious. I convinced myself that this was the universe's way of saying that we weren't meant to be parents.
Oh, yeah. That's not uncommon. I'm glad that you said that, because I think that's a really relatable sentiment.
Because I just thought, well, this is like, what a curveball. Like, someone up there is really trying to stop us from having kids, which isn't, wasn't healthy mindset, but I couldn't help but go there.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So the therapist helped me through those thoughts, and, sort of kept coming back to the point that, your thoughts have no bearing on the outcome. Just because it won't work doesn't mean it won't work. Just because
that is true. We talk about that a lot. Although I can see it from both ways, because I do think having some sort of a positive attitude also affects your stress and your mental health, so I think that there can be an argument made for both of those things. And it just kind of depends what, a certain person is going through at the time. It's interesting. It's not black or white at all, right? It's really gray, all that stuff.
Absolutely. So that was our Canada experience. So,
oh my gosh. So where do you go from there?
Yeah. So we went to the US. So I did have a friend of a friend who had gone through Utah Fertility Center in the US and had a really good experience. So we Skyped with Dr. Fook, who actually wrote the introduction to my book. And straight off the bat, we just, we really connected and had a really good feeling about him, because, he didn't rush us on the call. He took his time. He was empathetic. He acknowledged everything that we'd been through and was like, you guys have been through a lot, and, I'm here to help you have a baby, and we'll do everything we can to help you. And it was a really nice approach, because I'd been used to sometimes specialists just kind of, rushing you through the appointments. And sometimes you felt like you're just a number. And he really wanted to take his time to work out what was happening. But he also had agreed with our previous fertility doctor that the lining was the culprit. And he said, you need thick and healthy soil for a plant to grow.
Interesting. Oh, I've never heard it put that way. That makes a lot of sense. So what was the plan?
So we then met with a surrogacy agency called Rocky Mountain, and it's a boutique surrogacy agency, and Tess, the owner, same with Dr. Fook, like we just had an instant connection and rapport. And she said, I've actually got 2 women in mind for you that I think, you guys would, be well suited. So she sent us 2 profiles, and we had a Skype with our gestational surrogate Leah, and straight away, instant rapport.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had one of those Skypes that went for, over an hour, and we couldn't stop talking. And, at the end, I was just like, this is the woman. Like
and again, it sounds like it happened so quickly for you in terms of matching.
It was really quick. It happened within
that's wild
weeks. The process then took probably, I think we met with Leah in November, it was like 2017, but we didn't do our first transfer till Feb, which is still pretty quick. I mean, that's 3 months, because, getting the contract drawn up, and Leah had to do a bunch of tests at her end, and we had to transport the embryos over again, which was a very nerve-wracking experience.
Okay. So you had to do a whole new retrieval and make more embryos, or you said you had one left, but you made more?
We had one left, but we did another retrieval just to get a few transport more over. We used a different company, but it was still incredibly nerve-wracking.
Was there ever any recourse that you guys took with the initial courier or the other clinics or anything? Or was it just nothing came of it because you weren't really sure what happened or who to blame?
Well, that's exactly right. So we did meet with a lawyer, and in the end, she just made the point that it was really difficult to prove what happened.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing we could really do. So, both the fertility clinics and the transport company showed that they improved their processes a bit, but nothing came of it. And it was one of those things that in the end, we kind of just decided that we didn't have enough fight to pursue that, plus also focus on building a family. Like it had to be one or the other, because too much time and energy was going into working out what had happened.
Absolutely.
it's like whatever reserves we had to focus on actually, falling pregnant and building a family. So
totally. Plus financially too, to be litigious is expensive.
Exactly. So yeah. So then, yes, moved on to the US, and the first transfer failed. So it was just a straight out fail, which was, obviously upsetting, but at the same time, by that point, I was used to so many failed transfers, although, given that, Leah, had two boys of her own, and she'd actually also been a surrogate for a couple from Spain a couple of years before. So, and we transferred into PGS embryo again. So, we were a bit confused why it didn't work, but also know that sometimes even when everything looks perfect, things don't work.
Right.
And then the second transfer, we fell pregnant, and we had a scan at, I think it was 7 weeks or 7.5 weeks, and everything was perfect. So heartbeat was strong. Baby was measuring well. Leah's hormone levels were high. So the next scan was at 9 weeks, and it was at like 3 a.m. or something, our time, Melbourne time. And so given everything had gone so well with the first scan, and once they say, you've got a strong heartbeat, the chances of miscarriage dramatically decrease. And, Leah suggested that her husband Josh take some photos and video, and when we wake up, we just give them a call. So I woke up at about 6 a.m., as you do when, something, you're looking forward to something. And I checked my phone, and there were no messages from Leah. And the moment I saw that there was no messages, I just had that awful feeling that
the heart sinking, gut wrenching, like feel like you're going to barf.
Correct. Exactly. And so Ryan was asleep, and I walked over to his side of the bed, and on the bedside table was his phone, and I saw on his home screen a WhatsApp message from Josh, and all I could see on the message was, "I'm so sorry, but we've lost the baby." And then I was trying to unlock his phone, and I managed to lock it because I didn't know the PIN. I thought I didn't, and so then he's waking up. He's like, "What's happening?" I'm like, "We've lost the baby. I can't get into your phone," and it was just horrible. So, and it was
so sorry,
so devastating for Leah, because it was her first miscarriage, and she just had a ton of guilt. So she felt like this poor couple have been through so much, and now I've lost the baby. And of course, as we know, miscarriage is no one's fault, and it's outside of your control. But she definitely felt guilty about it, which is an awful feeling.
Yes.
And, we Skyped a day later because, she just needed some time to herself. And she also had to have a D&C procedure as well. And then, when we Skyped the next day, she told me later, like, "Oh, so relieved after our call, because, I was worried that you guys would be mad at me." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, no!" Like, I couldn't, imagine anything further from the truth. Like, all we wanted to do was, be together in person and, hug and grieve together. And, we couldn't. We were in Australia, they're in America. So that was
right. You're like, "I just want to give you a hug right now."
Yeah. Exactly. So that was definitely a real challenge of international surrogacy, is when something like that happens that you're so far away.
Yeah. Were they able to determine what exactly went wrong?
Yeah, they were. So it was a subchronic hematoma.
Okay. Yep.
So which cut off with the placenta, so the supply from the baby. And, they said it's just one of those things, it can't be prevented or treated. So it was just bad luck. So again, superstition started creeping in. I'm like, of course, it was one of those random things that happened. Cannot be treated or prevented. And so that's what happened. And then we had our next transfer, our third transfer.
How long after? And still with Leah?
It's still with Leah. So she was determined to help us after the miscarriage. So, just so admirable, because I feel like going through something like that, so many women would want to walk away. Fair enough, but she was like, no, this is not the end of your story. I'm more determined than ever to help you,
right,
our family. And so it was, I think, 3 months later that we went again after she had healed mentally and physically. And then that was our success transfer. So a happy ending in the end. We fell pregnant with Spencer, and yes, so the third time was the charm.
So this is 6 years all in.
Yes,
since you guys had started to try. And tell me about the call when you found out that she was pregnant with Spencer. Did you know the gender?
No, we didn't know the gender till 15 weeks. So look, when she called, we were cautiously optimistic. So I wasn't excited as the previous time, because I thought, okay, we're pregnant again. Let's just get through the first trimester before we get too excited. So
absolutely. I think that I just want to interrupt really quickly and say that that's so common for people who, pregnancy after loss, that you just can't relax. It's just, it robs you. Infertility robs you of the joy of a smooth pregnancy, whether it's yourself or a surrogate or, whatever the case may be. But it's just, I think that's one of the things that really is painful about this whole experience, is like so many people get pregnant and then they're just like elated and there's no drama. And, but for all of us who've been through it, you just are always, you're so used to getting the bad news. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You just can't really relax. So many people don't even want to have a baby shower or start working on the nursery because, you're just like, it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work, and that's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we started to tell people at around 15 weeks, because that's when we got the Harmony test result, even though we had transferred in a PGS embryo. And even then, it was sort of cautiously telling people. I was going to say, I felt more at ease after the 20-week scan, but it probably wasn't until he was born that I was like, oh, okay, now we can relax. Like now enjoy it, because
totally
so hard to enjoy pregnancy after going through.
Absolutely.
But yes, at 15 weeks, Leah and Josh actually organised a gender reveal cake for us. So we found out we're having a boy through the cake that organised.
Oh my gosh! And how old is Spencer now?
So he's 3, but he's 4 in July. So it's just gone by so quickly. And we actually caught up with Leah and Josh a few weeks ago. So now that we're over in America, so because we've kept in contact, and I should mention we actually lived with them for 5 weeks. So 2 weeks before Spence was born, and then 3 weeks after he was born. So we all lived together, which was just an amazing experience. And then we had planned to come and visit about a year after he was born. And then, of course, COVID just ruined everything. So, so we just saw them a month ago, and that was the first time we'd seen them face to face since Spencer had been born. So
that must have been emotional.
Amazing. It was so, and it was like no time had passed. We'd obviously been talking and Skyping all the time anyway. So, but it was also just so beautiful to see Spencer with them. And, because they were meeting, him and like his personality and everything for the first time. And, just really lovely to see. So we all met up in Vegas for a couple of days, and then we went back to their home in Utah and stayed there for a few nights as well. So,
oh wow, that's very cool. So tell me about your book, which is called This is Infertility.
Yes.
When did you start working on it? Was it during your journey, or did you have to wait till afterwards, or what was the timeline for that?
So I started working on it when Spencer was about 9 months old, and it was when COVID hit. So in Melbourne, in Australia, we went into some really long, strict lockdowns. And so that went for months and months and months, where you could just go to the supermarket and go out for 1 hour of exercise a day. And so I had some time to write it. So when Spencer was napping and, on weekends and that, I started to write it. And I don't think I would have been able to write it before he was born. I think I was just processing a lot of it. And at around 9 months felt like the right time for me to write my story then. And it was released end of last year through CNR Press, which is a publisher in North Carolina, where we're living, which is a complete coincidence. But
wow, that is a coincidence. So you're living in North Carolina now.
Yes. You've
been all over the place.
Yes, I know. Yes. So so it's basically my our 6-year IVF and surrogacy journey, and it's my personal experience, but also combined with some factual insights and research into IVF and surrogacy that I think people would find useful. And I found when we were going through everything, there was limited support and resources available. I think a lot has changed. I think in the last 5 years, there is, podcasts like your podcasts, and there's, online magazines, and there's books, and there's a very strong and active online TTC community through Instagram. But I felt like when we were going through everything, there's hardly anything.
Same.
Available. And so,
that's why I started the podcast and Fertility Rally, our community, because it's what I wish I had when I was going through it.
Yes, exactly. So I really just wanted to help people going through this journey, help people feel less alone, share some of my personal experiences and insights, and also, break some of the myths and the stigmas attached to infertility that, we touched on. So
Kirsten, what were some of the surrogacy, pieces of information that you discovered that you might not have known before when you were researching the book? What did you uncover?
Through the book, I talk about the differences between the altruistic surrogacy versus the commercial surrogacy, so Canada versus the US. I talk about some of the misconceptions around surrogacy, and certainly I have experienced that a little bit myself. So there is definitely a misconception that if you don't carry your child, will you bond with your baby, which is ridiculous. As we know, dads don't carry, dads aren't pregnant, but they bond with their children just fine. Or if you adopt a child or whatever it is, of course, there's a million ways to bond with your child. Doesn't matter if you carry them or not. And also that the other big misconception is that the surrogate will want to keep the baby and that they won't be able to, let go of the baby, though, won't be able to give the baby away or something like that. And straight up, Leah was, said to us, that when she was a surrogate the first time for the couple from Spain, she said, it was never my baby to begin with. Like, I'm a couple, and she always said, like, I'm extreme babysitting, or I've got a hitchhiker on board. But she goes, like, the love that I feel towards the baby is the same as I do my nieces and nephews, but it's not my child. And she said, I was more upset saying goodbye to the parents than I was the baby. So
yeah, totally.
And of course, then there's different views on surrogacy. Is it ethical? Is it not? Which, I go into in the book as well, because I think, like everything, of course, there are stories of it being unethical maybe in certain countries. But certainly our experience was, wonderful. And, Leah often says she got just as much out of it as we did. And, we've got this lifelong, beautiful relationship as a result, and, we'll be in each other's lives forever. And Spencer will definitely have, a close relationship with Leah and her husband, Josh, and, certainly nothing unethical about our situation, but, go into that a little bit as well. Yeah.
Okay. And then what about if someone's listening who's just embarking on, their newly intended parents, or going down the surrogacy road, or not quite sure, if they want to do that? I know it's hard to make that pivot, like we said, and it's not for everybody, of course. Everybody needs to make their own decisions and do what's best for their own body and their own family and their, their loved ones. So all stories obviously take different paths and end up differently. But if somebody does want to go through surrogacy like you did, what would you say to them who might be listening right now? Anything that now that you wish you knew then, or just kind of words of encouragement or advice?
Yeah. I mean, I think the relationship with the surrogate is so important. And I think it's a person that you have to trust 100%, especially if you're doing it internationally, because it was kind of all out of our hands a little bit. And, again, for us, it was such a wonderful and enriching experience. I thought going into it, or I was worried going into it, that I might feel jealous of Leah and jealous of not being able to carry our baby, but I didn't have those feelings at all. But I think because, once she was pregnant and we're through the first trimester, firstly, I just felt so happy and relieved that we're finally having a baby. And then secondly, because Leah just made us feel so involved in everything that, half the time I felt like I was pregnant anyway. So any kind of, feelings that you think, you're going to feel it's going to feel strange or jealous, like, most of the time I don't think you will. And friends and family for us were really supportive and just so happy and excited for us. So we didn't have any, there's no kind of judgment or stigma or anything that we experienced. I'm not sure that's the case for everyone, but certainly for us, people were just so relieved and happy for us. But yeah, I think communication is the key thing. And, we did a lot of Skypes, we did a lot of videos, every time there was a scan or an ultrasound, that wasn't too ungodly an hour, we were, Skyping in, and yeah, we felt very connected and involved in the whole experience, which I think is so important as well.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to get your free tickets, totally free, to Fertility Rally Live. We have Christina Perry as our keynote speaker. We've got a doctor's panel, 9 incredible breakout sessions, an afternoon reset, a happy hour, and tons of giveaways. So even if you can't come on April 29th, you can still reserve your ticket and you have 30 days to watch everything. So make sure you get your tickets. It's at the link in bio on my Instagram at Infertile Stories and at Fertility Rally's Instagram. And we hope to see you guys there. Thank you so much for listening.
It's Macy's Friends and Family. Get an extra 30% off great gifts for her just in time for Mother's Day when you use your coupon or Macy's card. And take 15% off beauty essentials or shop specials she'll love while supplies last. Plus, Star Rewards members earn on every purchase except gift card services and fees at Macy's. Sign up today at Macys.com/Star Rewards. Savings off regular sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.